Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. Welcome to our all candidates meeting for the upcoming municipal election on Monday, October the 24th. My name is Joseph Carbonetto. I'm president of the Stittsville Village Association. I would like to introduce Louise Beggs as your moderator. And yes, okay. Why not? And Hélène Rivet as your time marshal. Together, Louise and Hélène have chaired and timed many of these community all candidates meetings and debates in the last 20 years. Before that, Louise served as a municipal councillor for Stittsville and then as the first Stittsville Village Association president. And a warm thank you to the Stittsville United Church for granting us the space to host this meeting, as well as Stittsville Village Association and Stittsville Business Association for their efforts. These efforts are truly a benefit for all of us in our community. Last but not least, a special thanks to SVA's Phil Sweetnam and to ISI Live Webcasting for their technical support. This evening would not be possible without your help. Thank you so much. Before I turn the microphone over to Louise, there are a few disclosures I'd like to make in honor of our candidates. Glenn Gower has served on the Stittsville Village Association for some time, and he is no longer part of the Stittsville Village Association, so he did not have any way in organizing this meeting tonight, so it's just keep it unbiased and fair. Tanya Hein is past president of the SVA Association, and for many years she has served on that, and neither has Tanya had anything to do with organizing this evening or managing or maintaining it. Also, ISI Live, as you see the cameras and the television equipment, so smile. They're going to be, of course, live streaming this event, and even after it will be archived. So if you do have any friends that say, I missed the debate, or I missed the Q&A, let them know. They can go to the link, they can play it again, and if they want to ask any questions, they can send them, and we'll make sure that our candidates will get them. Now, ISI Live, of course, Bank Netherly, who is an executive of ISI Live, does work with Glenn Gower, okay, on campaigns. Bank has nothing to do with the production this evening, or editing, or management of this event. This is just being said to create the unbiasedness and the true democratic nature that should be in our community. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over. I have a really short bed. Anyway, I'm going to turn the microphone over to moderator control to the meeting to Louise. Thank you.
Very good. Is my microphone on? I don't know. Do you hear okay? Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. And tonight what we're going to do is have a conversation with 4 candidates who are offering to serve as your municipal councillor for Stittsville Ward 6. But before we get into sort of the heart of the meeting, I wanted to share with you a personal confession. At the May provincial debate or question and answer meeting, I had confessed to you that I find dressing for these events incredibly difficult because I want to be neutral, and I'm neutral, but I can't wear red or blue or orange or brown. There's so many colors I can't wear. But of course, the All Candidates is a wonderful opportunity. There are no colors and no parties. So I took the easy way out tonight, and I went on Google, and I looked up September 26th, and I tried to find out what unites all of us equally tonight. And today, and I kid you not, is National Pancake Day. So I'm wearing brown, golden-colored brown, in honor of National Pancake Day, which is totally neutral for our candidates. So just so you know. In sincerity, though, I'd also like to thank the Stittsville Village Association for, again, asking me to moderate this evening, and of course for the excellent assistance I always receive from our timekeeper, Hélène Rivet. I would also like to pause with you just for a moment to do a land acknowledgement. We're doing these more and more these days, and it has a place here tonight. So we acknowledge that the land we are on right now is part of the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. We honor the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation's long history of welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory, and we uphold and lift up the voice and values of our host nation. We also recognize our individual responsibility to foster reconciliation and peace with all Native Indigenous peoples today and every day. Thank you very much. Now, my task tonight is to ensure that we have an open and peaceful discussion that is fair and respectful to our 4 candidates, among them, and for you as well as their electorate. I'd like to introduce you to your 4 municipal candidates now in alphabetical order. They're not sitting in alphabetical order. If you please raise your hand. The first candidate, Matthew Duchesne, Tanya Hein, Kevin Hua, and Glenn Gower. He's our incumbent. So thank you to each one of you for offering to serve as municipal councillors. I was elected councillor for Stittsville a long, long time ago, but I absolutely remember the hard work and the courage it takes to run for public office. So please be assured, all 4 of you, that you have my unstinting appreciation and respect. So now we may begin with the rules of this evening. They're very simple, but I will share them with you again just so that we're all cooperating in the same adventure tonight. The 4 municipal candidates have agreed to the rules this evening. They will begin with a 2.5-minute introductory comment. Then we will begin the longest part of our meeting, which is the open floor for you to ask questions. And you have opportunities to pick up those tickets that are being distributed to you. You will have 45 seconds to place a question. Our candidates will have 90 seconds to reply. The key tonight is that each question gets 1 answer. There are, again, no rebuttals. So each candidate answers once to your question. Lastly, each candidate will close then with their closing statement for another 2.5 minutes. And for our candidates, I'd like to just point out to you that the time is being run here by our timer, Lenedive. It's projected onto the wall. And at 10 seconds before your closing time, Ellen will flash the red pan handle there. And you will know that's time to stop. And after that, the buzzer will go if you exceed your time. And we will be respecting the time limits. I'm quite picky about that. I also would ask the audience to respect silence when a question is being asked and also when a question is being answered across the table as well as among ourselves. And it's very, very unlikely to happen, but if anyone's behavior became very disruptive, I will give 1 warning. Failure to respect my 1 warning, and he or she will lose the opportunity to speak this evening. But it won't happen, I'm sure. So we're ready to begin if Madame Timekeeper is okay. Thank you, Elaine. Okay, at this point, they have chosen their speaking orders at random, and our first person I'd like to introduce to give their opening comment is Matthew, please. Matthew Duchesne.
Is this working? Oh, wow, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here this evening. Thank you for coming, and thank you for joining me at the park. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Yes. Okay, good. So thank you for coming to see me at Village Square Park every Sunday, 11 to 2. We will keep this up until the end of the campaign, and after that, we will be seeing you at Cardell Rec for all our public consultations. For those that don't know me, my name is Matthew Duchesne. I'm a double major in urban planning. I have extensive work background in engineering, project management, master's scheduling, and it is my honor to be here this evening. Thank you for having me. I am somebody who had the privilege to build new. Is this good, guys? Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Too close.
Back?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Back up a little bit, Matthew, please. Thank you.
I'm somebody who built new in the area. Okay, so I'm somebody who built new in the area, and I've represented people buying and selling for over 8 years in the community, so I have a good idea of what the limitations are to access affordable housing and just housing in general. And I know the problems that we have in the community, and especially with builders. What I want to do is bring urban planning back to the conversation and really focus around urban planning. I never thought I'd be running for office, but here we are. I'm somebody that finds myself to be in a unique opportunity where I find myself able to effectively help the community because of my urban planning background and work experience, and that I plan on doing. I have very specific agendas that I want to, and objectives that I want to fulfill here in the next 4 years. So our population is set to double in the next 20 years, and we really want and need to figure out where we want to put this intensification. As it stands, we're planning piece by piece, and we don't have a cohesive master plan for the area, and that's something that really bothers me, and something I'm hearing at the doors from residents, that they're being negatively impacted by new developments, and those new developments are getting impacted by the lack of quality of housing and the lack of road infrastructure. We are building developments ahead of infrastructure, and then that is a uniquely Ottawa problem and something that I find unacceptable. So we wanted to put safety first. We want to make sure that the fire department's being listened to. When I knock
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our next speaker is Tanya Hein, please.
Thank you to the Stittsville Village Association and the Stittsville Business Association for hosting tonight. Thanks also to my fellow candidates. I can tell you, having helped organize and moderate this event in the past, it's much more intimidating from this side of the table. As you heard, my name is Tanya Hein. This is my first time running for office, but I have been heavily invested in making Stittsville a better, stronger community for many years, ever since actually I moved here in 2005. I currently serve with a number of volunteer organizations, including the Board of Directors for Ottawa Neighborhood Watch, for the Goulburn Museum, ALC School Council, and of course with the SVA. I was named the Roger Griffiths Memorial Citizen of the Year for my volunteerism in Stittsville and across the city. Serving with the SVA, including 7 years as president, really opened my eyes to the impact that city governance has on our community. My focus for most of the last decade has been on planning and development files, and Stittsville, as you probably all know, is going through a period of tremendous growth right now, and that's one of the main reasons that I'm running. Managed properly, this growth is a real opportunity to build an even better community where people can live comfortably and affordably, where we can move around safely, get to work, get to our appointments, pardon me, and enjoy everything Stittsville and Ottawa have to offer. An effective and productive council is really key to guiding this vision, but that's not, unfortunately, what we've experienced over the last 4 years. Instead, we saw griping and hostility, name-calling, and division between urban and suburban wards. Our councillor quickly aligned himself with the Watson Club voting bloc. He supported the approval of a precedent-setting 18-story building here in Stittsville, yet did not manage to secure a single affordable unit of housing. Not one. He blocked discussion on judicial inquiry into the LRT fiasco, and he made a number of questionable decisions, like supporting a significant tax rebate for a luxury car dealership. I am raising my family here, and I want the best for Stittsville. I believe in strong leadership, in city government that serves residents, and in building safe, amenity-rich neighborhoods that meet all our needs. I have a strong record of working for the community, and I hope you'll support me in taking my advocacy to the next level.
Thank you, Tanya. And now I'd like to introduce and invite Kevin to present his statement.
Thank you. I'd like to also just quickly acknowledge that the land in which we are having this debate is the unceded, traditional, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people who have been living here since time immemorial. As residents, as city council candidates, and as one of us will be city councillors, it continues to be our duty to strive for reconciliation by empowering and elevating Indigenous voices and input in city decision-making and policy-making processes. My name is Kevin Hua. I'm one of your city councillor candidates here in Stittsville Ward 6. Some of you may recognize me as that kid that keeps on running for elections. So I'm a 21-year-old Carleton University student studying public affairs and policy management with a specialization in social policy. I've worked in public service. I've worked as an office secretary for the Ottawa Catholic School Board's Indigenous and International Languages program, and I've also volunteered with the organization Around the Campfire, an organization that gives a socialization group for kids with mental and developmental disabilities. I'm running this election for two reasons. The first is that, like many other residents, I'm frustrated with the dysfunction, the stagnation that we've seen at City Council, how the interests and needs of Stittsville and its residents have been neglected and ignored. I'm here because I want to fight for Stittsville's needs, its interests, because Stittsville deserves a better transit system that actually serves the community. It deserves quality amenities and services for kids, families, and everyone in our community, as well as true climate action for the future generations. So I'm looking forward to this discussion we'll be having today, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. And now we'll hear from Glenn Gower, please.
Thank you, Louise. Hi, everyone. It's good to see a big turnout tonight. This has become a bit of an election tradition here in Stittsville with the Village Association. I'm Glenn Gower, and it has been an absolute honor to serve this community for the past 4 years as City Councillor. And I've tried to demonstrate that I'm a hardworking and responsive elected official, first and foremost. There is a ton that we have accomplished together over the past 4 years. I remember one of my very first meetings at City Hall was in early 2019. It was about Shea Woods. And staff said, "Councillor, we've got a problem. The deal for Shea Woods has fallen through." And, well, we worked together and we found a solution. And back this spring, we secured a new deal to save that forest, and it will be protected as a forest in our community. Another early meeting was about Robert Grant Avenue. And at the time I asked, what's the schedule to build the next phase of Robert Grant Avenue from Abbott Street to Hazeldean? Staff's answer was 2027. Well, construction is just starting right now on that stretch of roadway, and it'll be done within the next 2 years. I also talked a lot in the last campaign about revitalizing Stittsville Main Street, and we're well on our way. We have a number of new businesses that have already opened and more coming soon. I had council approve a new plan for upgraded sidewalks and a bike path along the street, and the first phase of renewal, decorative streetlights, is happening right now. But it's some of the little community things that I think are most important to me. Like about this time last fall when we helped an older couple, Wayne and Darlene. We rounded up a couple dozen volunteers to help them clean up their yard from some leaves in their backyard. Or how we helped the Duncan family get a street named after their son who had died in a tragic car crash. Or when I saw Linda, a cleaner at the Granite Ridge Community Care Center, waiting for the bus after a long shift without a bench to sit on. The next week, we had a bench for her to sit on. And I don't do any of this alone. I do it together with a lot of help. My staff in my office, yes, but also residents like you, and local businesses and local community organizations. And we've done it through more than 2 years of a pandemic, and I think we showed Stittsville spirit certainly after the windstorm back in May, when we helped clean up the trees and when we supported each other with wellness checks and helping people out who had the power outage. And it's these kinds of things that I hope to be able to keep supporting the community and working together over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you to all four candidates. You've heard their opening statements. Now it becomes your opportunity to ask questions. And I'll remind you, you have 45 seconds to place a question. Our candidates have 90 seconds. And again, there will be no rebuttal. So one question, one answer. And that's it. So before we go right to the floor, we have 3 questions already in hand, two from the Stittsville Village Association and one from the Stittsville Business Association. So I'd invite Joseph, do you want to place your question? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. This is all the candidates. Question number 1. Effective transportation infrastructure is critical to the ability of businesses to attract and keep talent, move goods and services, and support smooth supply chain logistics. What are your priorities to address some of these issues we have with the transportation infrastructure in Stittsville?
Thank you very much. I'll ask Matthew to answer first, and we'll move left from you.
That's a great question, and it all comes down to urban planning and how we're planning our community. Robert Grant is meant and intended to be the backbone of our transit and transportation infrastructure, and effective now, as he says, shovels are going in the ground this fall, to build a watered-down version of the intended ultimate model, which it calls for 4 lanes plus a bus rapid transit to connect us all to transit to optimize the LRT stations that we're getting. We are getting 3 LRT stations here in Stittsville. We are lucky enough to have those, and I'll make sure we expedite phase 3. And in order for the community to reach the last station at Hazeldean and Robert Grant, we need to build Robert Grant to its intended size. We can't just keep doing the roundabouts. It already is not working. The bus drivers are pissed. They can't get around these roundabouts. If you look at Cope and you look at the way we're building our community, the infrastructure is lacking, it's inadequate, and it's inappropriate for our developments. We have to make sure Robert Grant is built to its ultimate size. And I've heard this time and again at the doors. And why we're not doing that is beyond me. My sources in engineering at the firm who's designing this back me up. No one understands why he's watered it down, and from the best of people's understandings of why is because he's not sure if the demand will be there. And so that's what happens when we have a chair of the Urban Planning Committee that has no experience or degree in urban planning whatsoever.
Thank you, Matthew.
You're welcome.
It's your turn to answer, Glenn.
Priorities in transportation infrastructure. There's three things, and I think they're about equal in terms of priority. One is roads and transportation. I mentioned in the beginning the Robert Grant extension to Hazeldean Road. It's planned to continue that all the way to the Queensway. That's critical to provide a north-south route as an alternative to Iber Road, Stittsville Main Street, and Terry Fox. Other priorities would be Carp Road, so that's scheduled to happen before 2025. And there's others like Fernbank Road and Maple Grove Road that are important as well. Second is around transit. Local investments in transit and continue to make sure that we give people a realistic option to get around our community locally and outside of our community as well by transit. And then a third priority is around what we call active transportation, but it basically means cycling and pedestrian facilities in our community. Another good example, again, is Stittsville Main Street. We have a lot of east-west cycle paths in Stittsville. The Trans-Canada Trail is a great spine route, but once you get to Stittsville Main Street, there's no safe way to ride a bike. So if we can bring safe cycling infrastructure to Stittsville, Maine, it's another way that we can support our businesses. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who bike through on a weekend. Let's make it easier for them to visit the shops and services on Stittsville, Maine in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And Kevin, please.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we see in Stittsville in terms of transportation is just the amount of congestion we have. And it reflects just how car dependent Stittsville is as a community. That the way we've designed our community, the way we've designed our roads are largely just for cars. The transit network we have here is not at all sufficient. It's not reliable. It's not frequent enough. So the big things I'd like to see is the first thing is we need more local routes running through the community to increase coverage, give people the option to be able to take public transit, as well as to bring a bus station here to serve as a transit hub, because we have more than 40,000 people in this community, but not a single bus station to help serve that community. Additionally, the big thing we also need to support is also empowering residents to be able to take other options like active transportation to get around the community. We know active transportation is particularly critical in local economies by producing and generating more growth. And so we need to bring an end to all the abruptly ending sidewalks, all the missing protected cycling lanes, more bike paths, more multi-use paths, so that residents have options in how they travel so that they're not locked in to just their cars.
Thank you, Kevin. And Tanya, please.
I agree with a lot of what's already been said. Certainly the priorities that Glenn mentioned, they were the same ones he mentioned when he was first elected, and we're still looking for those things to happen. Stittsville Main Street, we do have the public realm improvement plan, and he did mention, we have options coming there for cycle paths and pedestrian ways that will make it safer for people to access Stittsville Main Street to get to the businesses there. Unfortunately, that is a plan without a budget or timeline, so I think we really need to work on advancing that and coming up with more of a plan rather than a vision. In terms of transit, our transit isn't really functional in Stittsville. We need to have local service that can get us to different locations in Stittsville to get us to Canada, Bell's Corners, and other neighborhoods, not just a commuter service downtown. When we don't have that in place, we are limiting what people who don't drive, how they can experience the city, how they can get around, how they can get to our businesses. So I really think we need to look at that as an accessibility issue, not just a transportation issue. And again, like Kevin mentioned, the connectivity between the trails, that's been a problem for years and years. Carp Road has been on the books for, I don't even know how long. It just comes up year after year. So we really need to make some advancements and real progress on these issues.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, there's a second question now by the Stittsville Village Association. Would you like to?
Thank you, Louise. My second question, and actually the first question I asked was actually, I have to co-credit Andrea Greenhouse from the Stittsville Business Association. I had a very similar question, but she just made it sound so much better, so I used hers. The second question is from one of our SVA members. Her name is Mandy Hambley, and this morning she sent me this email asking a very simple question. But still, to all the candidates, once again, I address as follows. Our Stittsville youth need somewhere to hang out. What ideas do you have to solve this issue?
Thank you, Joseph. We'll begin at this end, Tanya, and we'll go to your right, please.
So, Stittsville youth, we've seen them, we hear complaints about them, we hear about people hanging out in the McDonald's parking lot. That's probably not the most productive use of our young people's time. I would like to see more facilities. We have the skateboard park, but I'm not a skateboarder, but what I've heard from other younger people that do engage in that sport, that it's not really the type of facility that they wanted. I have heard that there are efforts to get a pump track, which is sort of a bumpy bicycle track that you can have in Stittsville. That's been really exciting. I'd like to see more accessible programming for youth so that they can take advantage of the programs that the city already offers, but possibly with less financial barriers as well. I'd like to see the city maybe move forward on utilizing our recreation facilities a little bit better, so that when there are times when no one is using those facilities, that maybe we can work on programming, especially for our youth, that could fit into those time slots.
Thank you, Tanya. Kevin, please.
Yeah, maybe perhaps I'm a bit more well-positioned as somebody who's also a young person in this community. And I think one of the things we're lacking in Stittsville is a lot of youth outreach. Like Tanya said, if they don't have anything to do, they tend to just gather in McDonald's parking lot, and then they end up causing misbehavior because they're bored. They don't have anything to do. So the important thing is we need to have more youth outreach, more youth programs, give them things to do, more park space, ensuring that there's facilities like a skate park, more basketball courts, these places where they can hang out, enjoy, and socialize. I think that's the biggest priority in terms of addressing youth needs in our community.
Thank you. Glenn, please.
Thank you. First of all, the best way to find out what youth would like is not from 4 candidates up here. It's to go out and ask youth. We actually did that recently through a survey with local high schools, and it stemmed from a program that we launched with the city's recreation program, where they actually had facilitators who went out into local parks. Some of the parks were, sometimes we've had some issues before, and they'd bring with them some ball hockey gear or basketball and help to organize some drop-in games and so on. So we've used some direct feedback there and also some feedback from a survey out to each of the local high schools. And one of the simplest things that people have asked for, that youth have asked for, teenagers, is give us some place to drop in and play some sports. Give us a place where we can go and pay $1 or $2 and play basketball at the rec center. The ideas from my fellow candidates here are great, and I think they're all achievable, doable things. I think overall youth want to see some support and some activities and some engagement with other people in the community. So looking forward to supporting that in the years to come.
Thank you, Glenn. And Matthew, please.
Okay, I have a lot of ideas. The main one is getting the builders to pull their weight around the community. When's the last time we saw Mattamy build anything, a community center? We want to see an indoor pool, hopefully an Olympic-sized pool. We'd want to get builders to finish existing parks and new developments. As it stands, they're partially finished, so the youth have nowhere to go. And I want to talk about the larger picture, the CTC. So the Canadian Tire Centre is, the sends are getting pulled from under us, and it's a main economic driver in the area, but also a great opportunity for redevelopment and get together as a community and plan what we want for this site. An entertainment district, something really big, something that we can really be proud of, a way that we can optimize the LRT stations we are getting to this area. Think of Mississauga, think of major urban cities in North America. We have a lot of potential here in Stittsville, and we will be using it, and we will be talking about it, and I'm very excited to unveil my plan this evening to you guys as to ways to achieve that.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Okay, there's a third question now from the Stittsville Business Association. Joseph, is Andrea Greenhouse here? Oh, brilliant. Would you come forward, please? Yeah.
Working? No. Okay, everybody can hear me? Oh, I think it is working. So, Andrea Greenhouse, the writer of the transportation question. But it was a very business-focused question. Anyways, my question is, businesses are the backbone of our community. They sponsor our sports teams, they give local people jobs, and they also help us have a thriving community, coffee shops where we can hang out and, with our friends. What plans do you have to support businesses in our community over the next 4 years? Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. And I'll ask Kevin to start, and we'll proceed to your right.
I think I did mention it before, but I think the biggest way we can help the local economy, local businesses in Stittsville is empowering and elevating active transportation in our community, because active transportation is perhaps the best way to get people to shops. Because, you know, if you're driving in your car, you're not really going to stop at a shop because you're going to have to find a place to park, you're going to have to figure out all that. If you're biking or walking, you're more likely to go into a shop, go browse in it, and purchase something. So I think the biggest way is filling in the connectivity gaps we have in our community, making the option of active transportation truly an option that residents can take safely, and building protected cycling lanes, filling in those missing sidewalks, all of those things to support our local businesses. It's about getting people to those businesses in our community.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Glenn, please.
Well, I know two things that I can do and continue doing. One is supporting the Stittsville Business Association. There's a kind of a strength in numbers approach here, and I think where we see a lot of local business success is when we have strong associations. So applaud the work that Andrea and her executive on the SBA have done to engage local businesses. The other thing is to hammer home that message of support local. There's a huge opportunity now as work shifts to home and we have more of our residents who stay in the community all day long rather than traveling to downtown or other employment centers. There's a huge opportunity to encourage people to support local businesses and put local businesses first. Maybe put a pause in some of the big box chain stores or even some of the online, and spend your money locally. That's the best thing we can do to keep reminding people and encourage local businesses to keep investing in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. Matthew, please.
Thank you. I'd like to add to that. So by building the big box store models that we currently have, that is the issue. We're not allowing small businesses a place to pop up and thrive. So we're talking about building complete neighborhoods, not partial neighborhoods, getting the builders accountable, holding them accountable, and legislating them to build small commercial areas in existing neighborhoods. My neighborhood in Abbotsville, we have absolutely nowhere to walk to. There's no shopping options. We have to use our cars. If you go on walkscore.com and check your walkability score, you're going to see that you're going to be very low. I'm a 3 on 100, which is as low as it gets. So if we don't start building complete neighborhoods, we will never have walkable neighborhoods, we will never have sustainable neighborhoods, and we will never be able to encourage small businesses because we just keep prioritizing the big box models. So that doesn't work, and we really got to rethink the way that we do planning in this city.
Thank you, Matthew. And Tanya, please.
I agree with Glenn. The SBA has done a wonderful job, but I think we could work together with the association as a council to build a little bit more buzz and create an identity for Stittsville businesses. I know a lot of Stittsville businesses that are nearer to Canada still identify as Canada rather than Stittsville, and I want them to be proud to be a Stittsville business. So I think we can work on that, creating a little bit more of a local identity there. I'd also like to see better accessibility. Like Kevin said, active transportation is a good thing. CARP has been able to capitalize on cycling to create a little bit of a business hub there. But just also little things like our winter maintenance, making sure that people can get through the sidewalks so that they're able to access shops year-round.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Okay, that concludes the prepared questions. I'm opening the floor to you. So, Joseph, I believe you have numbers. If you want to ask a question, okay, you've chosen 3. Okay, these are the first 3 lucky people. So you can come up to the microphone if you'd like, and I'll instead of 3, and we'll generate new people next. Okay, so just the 3 last numbers: 5, 9, 7. Okay, please come to the microphone. 602. The microphone's in the middle here. Is there a 602? 602? Yes, okay, wow. And a 605, who has number 605. Wow, we have a hat trick tonight. Okay, so if you'd like to come forward, and you can please say to whom you're addressing the question, either to the individual councillor first, or councillor candidate, or to the entire slate of candidates.
Yeah, my question would be to the entire slate.
Okay.
And the opening remarks talked a lot about transportation and personal transportation. I'd just like to know how the 4 candidates arrived here and the type of vehicle or make of vehicle or some other means. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll begin with Glenn on that, please, and work right. Yeah.
Okay, it's I drive a Mazda CX-5, but I also use my bike to get around the community, and also OC Transpo at least a couple times a week.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And Matthew?
So I drove here because we are car dependent, and that's the only way to get here. And if you want to know the make of my car, I think that is, yes, I drive a Porsche Cayenne. I had a lot of success in business in this community, and it's time to give back, and we need a councilor that's financially stable, so we're not, up for purchase.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. We'll come to Tanya, please.
I did drive here this evening. I drive a 11-year-old Mazda that has about 76,000 kilometers on it. As a mother of 4, that's not a lot of travel each year. I'm pretty known around Stittsville for driving my bike as well, with my kids on the back.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, thank you for that question. Would you like to come forward? Oh, sorry, Kevin. I'm sorry. My apologies.
So I biked here. I don't have a driver's license, so I can only choose to bike or use transit in the community. So I guess maybe if you're considering voting for somebody who very much knows what the issues are in terms of taking active transportation or the frustrations with public transportation, then maybe I'm your guy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin. And the next question, please.
Hi. I live right on the corner of Maple Grove and Huntmar. We're going to have a multi-million-dollar intersection made. On the right-hand side of us, we have this massive housing project that's going to be made. On the other side of the intersection, we're going to have another massive housing project. When I ask about the bike path in the road that goes down Huntmar to that intersection, there's about 60 feet. The bike path just disappears and you push into the traffic. Okay? When I ask everybody in the city about, can't you look at those 60 feet? I'm told, no, it's outside of the project. How do you plan a project without looking at the bigger scope of what's around you, even if it's like half a kilometer or something? But how do you always look at these things independent?
And to whom are you addressing your question? All the slate. Okay, so we'll begin with Kevin and go right, please. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this isn't unique to just there. I mean, we have seen on the left side of Huntmar Road, when you're going up from Hazeldean, the sidewalk there abruptly stops, and then it continues again. There actually used to be a sidewalk there. It was ripped up a year later for some reason because we think that people don't want to walk there anymore. There are multiple instances of this sort of thing where we just have these connectivity gaps. Why don't we have it there? And that's the thing I want to fight for in this as city councilor is whenever we build a road, we ensure that there's the sidewalks in there already needed, bike paths, protected cyclanes, whatever is needed to ensure that residents don't just have private vehicles as their option, that they can choose to bike or walk. It's these sort of missing gaps that they can be small, but they should be addressed. They're easily addressable, that they just haven't been addressed for the past few years.
Thank you, Kevin. Glenn, please.
Yeah, it is frustrating for me as a councillor too sometimes when you find projects that don't always take into account something that might be happening down the road, literally down the road, I guess, in this case. I think it's a question of the development that's happened over the last 20 or 30 years in our community didn't always take into account bikes or pedestrians for whatever reason. And we need to take every opportunity when we're upgrading roads, when we're making changes to make sure we do that now. It's tough, though, to go back over 20 or 30 years and try to make retrofits and changes over the course of 5 or 10 years. So it does take some time, and it is frustrating sometimes that these things take longer than I would like and obviously than you would like as well. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Glenn. Matthew, please.
So we need to intensify smartly, build communities that make sense, and build communities that don't negatively impact existing residents above all. So adding more traffic and more development around the Huntmar area is not smart. And when we're not prioritizing transit-oriented developments, we are not planning sustainable, affordable, walkable communities. Instead, we're building development ahead of infrastructure, and that has been a common topic here, and it's constantly the same story. Building, development ahead of infrastructure. And people are frustrated by that. And we have to stop that practice. When we don't have a cohesive master plan for the area, this is what we get. Patchwork, just improvised developments. I don't know why that's the case, but that's going to end with me.
Thank you, Matthew. Tanya, please.
That's actually a really great question and a great point. And we do need to do it right moving forward. You know, we've made this mistake in the past over and over, and it does need to change. One of the things that I am heartened to see from the city is the Huntmar widening environmental study. You know, they are looking at a wider scale. It's going to include the extension of Stittsville Main Street and potentially an active transportation bridge over the 417 as well. So it's a little bit more holistic view and taking advantage of the proximity to look at multiple projects at once and to take a wider view.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
My name
Oh, maybe it's the king.
I don't know. Hopefully you can hear me better.
Yes, please place your question. Thank you.
All right. My name is Ade Olumide, candidate for the mayor of Ottawa. I'm going to ask a question, and whoever says no is ethically unfit to serve. Now, I already know that Mr. Gower's position is no. But do you support a transparency Bill of Rights for police complaints? I'll give you reasons why you should. The Alberta academic community have tried to put together such a database for Alberta. This is an issue that disproportionately affects Indigenous people, visible minorities, and as well female police officers. So within that context, Council has the power under the Municipal Act to pass a bylaw concerning transparency of any board for the city. So do you support police complaints, transparency Bill of Rights?
Thank you very much. Actually, is this question to Matthew or is it to everybody? To everybody. Then I'm going to begin with Glenn, please. Glenn.
Yes, good to see you again. I know I met you knocking on doors in the Jackson Trails neighborhood. My answer wasn't no, though. It was a commitment to that, yes, I would look into that. You had sent me some information by email, so I did commit that in the next term it would be something that I'd be happy to look into. So thank you for raising it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Matthew, please.
Yes, the more transparency, the better.
Oh,
Across the board.
okay. Thank you. And Kevin. We'll just jump a little differently now. Just keep you falling asleep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, we've seen over the past few years the absolute concern or the lack of transparency and accountability at City Hall. It has been a particular problem in terms of policing. I would definitely like to see more transparency and accountability, particularly in issues of complaints of any abuses that have been committed by police. These are things that should be properly addressed, and you know, we've been seeing a lot more issues in terms of this area. So this is definitely something I would definitely like to look into and consider and probably support.
Thank you, Kevin. And Tanya, please.
I also received your emails and have been taking it into consideration. I wasn't ready to give you a yes or no answer, but in general, I do support anything that does promote transparency. It's certainly lacking in council and something that we need to improve. And I think, as you mentioned, because there are racialized communities in particular and other certain groups that are more affected, that's something that we're paying more attention to now, and rightly so. And I think that should be given the due consideration that it deserves.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, there are now 3 new lucky people who may come to the microphone. We have number 599. Okay, number 604. And number 607. Yay! Well done. Do we have a third? Do I have all 3 here now, or is it? Pardon? The numbers were 607, 604, and 599. It's okay if you choose, you can change your mind too, that you don't want to ask a question, that's fine too. So we'll take the 2 that are here right now. If you'd like to present your question, please.
Thank you. Whereas in Ontario, communities with populations comparable to Stittsville have a minimum of 3 full-time fire apparatus and personnel employed for fire and emergency protection, whereas Stittsville has 1. Whereas since 2011, the households in parts of Stittsville, that is, east of Main Street, north of Abbott, pay higher fire rate taxes than the rest of Stittsville, even though the same 4 apparatus will go to either side of the street. And whereas Stittsville has the leanest guaranteed fire emergency response coverage of any ward in the city, where to all the candidates, if elected, what concrete measures would you undertake to increase the guaranteed fire coverage and support the fire chief and his administration in their proposal to address these critically studied and identified shortfalls?
Okay, thank you. Matthew, you can begin, and we'll become backward this way. Glenn next.
And yes, I spoke to the gentleman for 3 hours the other night, and we had a great conversation about the fire coverage in the community. And one of the issues that were brought up is the building materials we are using in our communities and our new developments especially. We are overusing siding and the use of styrofoam, and how close the houses are together, how narrow our streets are, is a huge concern for safety. And we should listen to the chief of fire and the fire representatives when they come and speak to us, and we should really note what they're saying and pass that on to the development part of the city, and so that we could build our new developments that are safe and offer adequate fire coverage. So in terms of fair taxation, I believe in fair taxation across the board. We're no longer part rural, part not. We're all one, so fair taxation across is what I believe in. As far as I'm concerned, we have really good response times here in Stittsville, but we need to ensure that each fire station has the right equipment. Like he was telling me the other night, we don't have the right fire equipment for certain developments in our community, like the new Mattamy Garden Homes, the 3-story townhomes. We're building so tight, our neighborhoods are so tight that the fire engines can't fit in certain developments and service certain densities, and he was saying that certain trucks have to come in from Preston to service parts of our developments and our community, which is unacceptable. If your apartment complex or house burns down or is on fire during a rush hour, we're in trouble.
Thank you, Matthew. Glenn, please.
First of all, I think it's irresponsible for anyone to suggest that Stittsville does not have adequate emergency services coverage, including fire. It's something that obviously the City of Ottawa and emergency services and the fire service take extremely seriously. The questioner did reference an interesting historical anomaly. There's an imaginary line on a map that separates old rural Stittsville from urban Stittsville. And there's a difference in the tax rate that people pay. On one side of the line, you pay significantly less. On the other side, you pay the regular urban tax rate. It does not affect at all the quality of your service. And every single new development that is reviewed by the city is also reviewed by emergency services, which includes police, fire, and paramedics, to make sure that Stittsville firefighters and Canada firefighters have the right equipment to serve this community. There's an ongoing review right now and recommendations expected early next year on what we need to do to ensure that as Stittsville grows, we still have the coverage for emergency services. So I'm looking forward to those recommendations coming from the fire chief, hopefully earlier next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. Kevin, please.
Yeah, so Stittsville is growing very fast, and so one of our concerns is ensuring that the services that are there are able to match and keep pace with our growth. If I recall correctly, the 2020 annual report and looking at our fire services in Ottawa did recommend that serious consideration should be given to taking Station 81 and turning it into a composite facility. This is definitely something I would like to pursue, the considerations, ensuring that there is active consultation with the public, with relevant stakeholders on the issue. But Stittsville is growing very fast, and it's definitely something that needs to be on our radar to ensure that we have the adequate fire services. Obviously, the volunteers at Station 81 have been phenomenal, some of the best that we have in the city, but it is still in our interest to ensure that our fire protection is keeping pace with the growth of Stittsville.
Thank you, Kevin. And Tanya, please.
Kevin actually summarized that really well. There's not a lot I can add. Again, none of us are fire experts, so we have to leave those decisions to the people that do know. So, I would take that information from the fire chief. I would look what's in the strategic plans, have that released and implemented. And, I'm not against making the taxation equal to make sure that, we don't have these inequalities throughout Stittsville. I would really, really like to acknowledge our volunteer firefighters, like Kevin said, have done a phenomenal job over the years. Our community is growing and changing. However, we may need to shift soon if that's the advice that we get from the experts in the field.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, and you have a new question for our candidates?
Thank you. Hi, my name's Judy, and I live in Stittsville, and my question is for Glenn. Presently, I have 2 adult children, but many years ago, our young daughter went to school, and she was placed in a portable, and she got very, very sick. A lot of the classmates got very, very sick, and the teacher was very, very sick. So I had to advocate and take on the school and beg them to go in and find out what was causing this. And after many attempts, they went in and they found some drywall with some really bad, I don't know, there was rain, so I don't know if it was bacteria or mold, and that's what was causing everyone to get very sick. So my question for you is, you've been counselor for a while now, what have you done to improve the regulation of portables or maintain them or make sure they're much safer?
Glenn, yeah.
There's one area where the City of Ottawa may have a role in portables, which is around building code and construction. Although if those portables are prefabricated, I don't even think the city has a role there. So the responsibility for portables and their installation, if they're prefabricated buildings, would lie with the school board, which falls under the province, not under a city jurisdiction.
Okay, that's his answer. Thank you. I'd like Kevin to answer that question if you wish. That you have an opportunity to answer. You wish to want to pass? Tanya, do you wish to comment?
I'll pass as well.
And Matthew,
Provincial responsibility.
Portables. Yeah, absolutely. So this no can do attitude ends with me. It's yes we can, yes we are, yes we will. Yes, we will have the discussion with the trustees, the school boards, or MPPs. Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about it. It's not, if they're so great, why don't the principal and the VPs put their offices in these portables? They're overused. We don't talk about the cost, the waste, how the students are uncomfortable, the teachers hate them, the janitorial staff can't maintain the grounds. They're irregular. They're improvised. I'm not going to use the words, but it's not great. And we need schools. We need real schools. And when I have people and clients and coming in from other parts of the world, India, and asking me, why do our kids here go to school in sheds? Well, why do they?
Okay, that's your answer, Matthew?
But it's the counselor's responsibility to open up the conversation with the school boards and bring awareness to the issue. There's a lot we can do. If you read the description of what a counselor does, we bring up issues in the community, and schools are not above that.
Thank you, Matthew. That concludes that question. Okay, I'm going to invite 3 more individuals to come to the microphone. 603 598 601. I want that again? Or we have a 601, a 598, and a 603. We have one here. Anybody else wanting to come from those numbers? No? Okay, you're which number are you, madam? 598. 598, excellent. Please come to the microphone. It is. We're pleased you came.
So this is a question for each of the candidates. I would ask you to describe for one of your priorities your plan to achieve it, including cost estimates, and where would you get the funding?
Sorry, can you clarify the question again?
Certainly.
What exactly is your question?
So the question was, I was asking them to describe for one of your priorities.
Oh, and okay.
What is your plan to achieve it, including cost estimates, and where the funding would come from.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start with Tanya, and we're going to go straight across. So Tanya, please.
That's an interesting question, and it's a really hard one to answer, but I will give you one of my small projects. Actually, it came from a local gentleman who advocates for cycling infrastructure and everything else. And so I had mentioned to him that one thing I would like to see is better signage along the trail. It's a really low-hanging fruit. It's an easy one to manage. I think it's easily reachable within existing budgets.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. Kevin?
Yeah, so I guess one of my priorities is climate action in the city and our community, and I guess the price tag for this is $9 million, and it actually comes from the federal gas tax money that the federal government gives to the city. City Council actually voted to defer that money and not invest it into the intended climate action. So one of the things that I would like to do is essentially put forward a motion, get City Council to invest that $9 million into ensuring that we have a green, sustainable city and community to pass on to the next generation and future generations.
Thank you, Kevin. Glenn, please.
I'll pick Stittsville Main Street revitalization as a priority. I've mentioned the Stittsville Main Street Public Realm Plan, a plan to upgrade the sidewalks, the cycling infrastructure, as well as beautification on the street. And there's a number of sources of funding there. The total price tag, I believe, is about $22 million, which could be over 5 to 7 years. We've already received a federal grant to do the street lighting, replace the street lighting on the street. We are now eligible, because we have a plan, to start applying for federal active transportation grants. The federal government has given cities, including Ottawa, millions of dollars over the last 2 years as part of COVID recovery, so we expect that to continue. Looking into an area-specific charge, so new developments, adding a charge onto the development that would be earmarked for Stittsville Main improvement projects, and also the developers themselves. The new shop near the equator, for example, they've been required to build that infrastructure for us, the start to the sidewalks and so on. So there's a number of different ways you put all these sources together, and that's how you can come up with what may seem like a big price tag from the outset. Thanks.
Thank you. Matthew, please.
Okay, I have a lot to say. We need to master plan our community, period, and do it properly and do it quickly. We need to optimize the LRT stations we are getting. We will never see success on Main Street if we keep using it as a main thoroughfare. It doesn't matter how many years we're planning on trying to redevelop it and throw money at it. We will never see success on Main Street if Robert Grant is not built as the main north-south arterial of our community. We will never see success on Main Street. So let's build the infrastructure we need and get real.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, that concludes that question. Oh, okay. Tanya, you want to answer that one? Oh, sorry, you're fine. Okay, we're good on that question then. Okay, there are two more lucky people who can come forward, 609 and 600, if you still wish to.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you all for what you're doing and that you're really trying. My question actually piggybacks a little bit on the previous question. I hear a lot of, yes, we can, yes, we will, and we need to do this and we need to do that. I also understand that when you become a member of a government, there's a heck of a lot of bureaucracy. And there's a lot of, no, there's no money for that, and there's no funding for that. So my question is, what makes you think you're the person who at City Hall is going to be effective in getting the yes we can and yes we will done? Because even in the last question...
Thank you.
Done?
That's your question. Okay. I'd like to ask Tanya to answer that one first, and we'll go straight down the line. No, I'm starting with Tanya. Yeah.
I think one of the important details that we need to do is making sure that we're reading the fine print. When we're talking about Stittsville Main Street and the Public Realm Improvement Plan, for example, if you look in the fine print of the projected cost, it doesn't include the grade-separated cycling lane. It just has pavers in between. It doesn't include property acquisition costs. It doesn't include the little lookout over Pool Creek. So it looks really beautiful on the pictures, but the realistic estimate isn't really there. So I think we need to have a complete picture, make sure that we're looking at all the details, making sure that, you know, we know what we're talking about when we're asking people to spend money, their tax money, on different projects. I think I'm one of those people that, you know, looks in the fine print. I want to do better, and I want to be responsible, and I'm like a dog with a bone sometimes.
Thank you, Tanya. Kevin, please.
Yeah, think it really comes down to priorities, particularly when it comes to our finances. You know, we could choose to invest in affordable housing instead of taxing residents $465 per person per year for urban sprawl. We could choose to invest in our transit network instead of giving a Porsche dealership a $2.9 million tax break. We could choose to invest in actual proper active transportation infrastructure instead of investing in or spending money on or spending $800 per flex stake that don't do much in terms of actually protecting our residents. Another, at least for me personally, I think one thing that I can offer is that maybe because I happen to be a student, one thing I really like to do is do research, look into things. When I don't know the answer, find somebody who does know the answer. And, you know, I think it really comes down to collaborating with city staff, with other fellow city councilors in order to look at what can we reasonably achieve, but also willing to have that higher vision just to have the optimism to build better, because I think we all deserve better in this community.
Thank you, Kevin. Glenn, please.
I really like that question. You've worked in government before, I think. I jotted down a few things. One is working together, building relationships. When people start in my office, I tell them what the most important thing you can do is build a respectful and trusting relationship with city staff. City staff are the key to opening up budgets, to getting our priorities at the top of the list. That's one. Being able to work well with other councillors. Something that I've done is tried to meet every councillor in their own ward. Several of them have given me around their ward and understanding where their concerns are, what do they have in common. And it's amazing across the city, whether you live in Stittsville or Cumberland or in Centertown or Manotick, it's amazing how similar the priorities are in each community, and it's really important to understand that and to learn from others. Working with people here in our community, local businesses, local community organizations, and also I think Kevin touched on is prioritizing. We can't achieve everything, and it can be difficult, so really focusing in on the things that matter the most to the community and that can really be achieved over the next 4 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Matthew, please.
Okay, so I want to talk about bringing the conversation back to Stittsville. And so we're in a system where the squeaky wheel gets the funding, so we need to be really squeaky and really loud. We need a loud cheerleader for Stittsville, and only for Stittsville. If you guys elect me, you elect me, and I'm elected by the people of Stittsville, not by the mayor, not by developers, special interest groups, etc. So we're going to bring, well, first of all, by master planning and having a good idea of what we need in the community. So the Sens are leaving, and being in denial is not a plan. So let's come up with a plan so we could advocate for it at the city. I'm sick of hearing about Lansdowne, LeBreton, and I ask these people, well, what's your plan for the Canadian Tire Center? They look at me like I have two heads because we haven't had the conversation. So if we don't start these conversations, how do we expect, are we part of Ottawa or not? You know, like why are we left behind here in Stittsville? That's the reality of it, and I'm going to push real hard to have our voices heard and identify issues that are critical to the success of our community.
Thank you, Matthew. That concludes that question. We have one remaining question here for our candidate here, our candidates.
Hello. Thank you all for being here and for taking the stand to run for council. This question's for Glenn, but anyone is invited to reveal their plans for this. Glenn, when I first sat down with you almost 3 years ago, I expressed my concerns with the irresponsible mess being left by developers in the Abbotsville Crossing development. Since then, the problem only got worse, with weather events like the windstorm in May spreading the mess across our entire community. You saw giant bales of styrofoam all the way down Fernbank, Terry Fox, etc. Products like styrofoam can take around 500 years to decompose, yet they're left to sit outside unused for months just to end up everywhere in our stormwater ponds and our trails. So my question is, beyond sending a sternly worded email, what have you done to hold developers accountable so that community members aren't left cleaning up their mess for the next few hundred years?
Thanks, Cody. Yes, developers are responsible to control their garbage and to keep their waste under control on their sites. Some do a better job of it than others, and a lot of it does end up blowing along farm fields and sometimes ends up in stormwater management ponds. The city has a development inspector, kind of like a bylaw officer, who's charged with making sure that waste is secure. And when it travels outside of properties, they are responsible to clean it up. So one thing I did do was ask, and the developers cooperated, and each spring, at least once a year, and I think lately it's been 2 or 3 times, they hire an external waste company that does go around and does a cleanup. I'm not sure that they get to all of it. I'm sure they don't, but they do now have a system. So the Richcrafts and the Mintos and the Claridge, the companies collectively hire a waste management company to go and do that cleanup. We're also we benefit and we're grateful for community residents who take part in the Cleaning the Capital campaign. This spring, nearly every single park and green space in Stittsville was spoken for by a community group, a school group, a group of neighbors, and that's always a huge help when we can all work collectively to keep our communities clean.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I've emailed him myself over the course of 3 years for my neighbors and the whole community about the builders not picking up their garbage. We've been left behind in Abbotsville, and we've been left living in a landfill for 2 years. The builders are not mandated by the city to do the right thing, and that's something Glenn can do something about, and he does not. So I would pass a motion or push to pass a motion to fine the builders $1,000 a day for any garbage left behind and put an end to this. We can't expect the community to pull the builders' weight. They make so much money off of us already, and they're already contributing very little to the community, and now they have free reign. They can do whatever they want, and they have been doing whatever they want because of weak leadership. That needs to end.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Kevin, you go ahead.
I think this touches on a bigger issue too that we've seen at City Council, and that's the amount of, or the sort of encroachment of developer influence, of developer money at City Council. I mean, just neighboring at Ward South, or Canada South, Ward 23, Alan Hubley has 99% of his last campaign funded by developer money. And so as one of my pledges in this campaign, in order to reduce this sort of developer influence, reducing the chance of this sort of conflict of interest at City Council, ensuring that the interests of residents are above those of developers, I am not taking any money from any developer or the developer industry.
Thank you, Kevin. Tanya?
Like Kevin, I am also not taking developer funds. I don't think any of us are actually in this particular race, so that's encouraging. Sorry to steal your thunder there.
It's good that there's some agreement, you know?
Yes, we do agree. What I would like to see, it's good to know that the developers are hiring some help. I think they could easily do that more often, and we should certainly be leaning on them to do that because it's absolutely unacceptable to have garbage flying throughout the community. We already have enough of it coming off of our garbage trucks and during collection there. We certainly don't need really deep-pocketed developers just leaving their trash for us to clean up. And, I think it's a real shame. Cleaning the Capitol is wonderful. I've been picking up trash in the community ever since I moved here, but it's really not up to the public to be handling that on behalf of the developers.
Thank you, Tanya. That concludes that question. There's a number 606. Would still like to ask a question? Okay, you're most welcome to come to the microphone. Do you have a ticket that was picked as well? Oh. And I called your number?
I don't know. We never looked at what the number was.
Oh, that makes it hard for me to pick it. Well, let's hear the 606 first, please. Perhaps
okay.
It'll be replicated.
Before you start the timer, I just wanted to say one quick thanks, if that's okay. So I just wanted to thank, actually, number one, Glenn Gower. When you ran in 2018, I'm sure you didn't know what you were in for. With the pandemic, with the 3-week illegal occupation of our city, so on and so forth. So thank you for that. And also to all of you who are seeking election tonight. Thank you to all of you. With the amount of, with the current political environment and the proliferation of vitriol, especially online, I'd like to thank all of you for subjecting yourselves and your families to the level of scrutiny that you're putting yourselves under.
May I ask you to get to your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, in 2018, we were asked to vote for change. Increasing crime, less police presence, less traffic enforcement, increased traffic congestion, and a broken public transit system, along with a councillor that voted along with the Watson Club to block any public LRT investigation, and also during the 3-week illegal occupation of our city, refused to work with what should have been a time to join together. He joined the Watson Club in using Diane Deans and Carolyn Meehan as scapegoats and actually voted in favor of putting Jen Harder on the...
Your question, please?
Yep. I'm providing
When we're running out of time, so.
Okay.
Your question?
So the question is, related to all of that, what positive change did you put in since 2018, and what positive change will you put in going forward?
Okay, this is to Glenn in particular?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with Glenn, and then we'll go towards Kevin. Glenn, please.
Thanks, Peter. 90 seconds to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you've picked 3 or 4 controversial things that happened over a very difficult 4-year period, as you pointed out. I spoke about some of the accomplishments early on in this debate in my opening statement. There's a lot that we've done here at the local level to make a big difference in the community. One of the things I hear often from people at the door is about communication, a complete change of tone in the way that we interact and consult and listen to residents here on the local level. I could... I don't know how to answer that question in 90 seconds. You've loaded a lot in there. Maybe I'll address 2 things. On the LRT investigation, I did support an Auditor General inquiry, and that was out of concern for the cost. The Auditor General has the same investigative powers, same access to documents, and could have completed an inquiry at a fraction of the cost of a judicial inquiry. We ended up with a provincial inquiry paid by the province. If we had approved that at council, the costs would have been completely borne by taxpayers. You mentioned the change in police board leadership in the occupation. We had a chair of the police board who was firing chiefs without any consultation to local councillors, and we had other confidential information that was leaking out from the police board. A change needed to happen.
Thank you, Glenn. Kevin, please.
Yeah, 4 years ago, Glenn did run on the fact that he'd be an independent voice for Stittsville. And unfortunately, it seems like he's more fallen in line with the Watson Group at City Council. Just to quickly address what Glenn has said, first of all, with the Auditor General's inquiry, it is not the same as a judicial inquiry. The big difference is, first of all, is an Auditor General's inquiry cannot investigate the decisions by City Council or any role that City Councillors or the Mayor played in the LRT project. And the second, that the interviews it would conduct would not be public. The public invested $2.1 billion into the LRT. We are stuck in a 30-year, $1 billion maintenance contract. I feel very much that the public has a right to fully know what happened with the LRT. This was one of the reasons why I ran, because I was extremely frustrated by this sort of lack of transparency and accountability. And the second was because Diane Deans was scapegoated off of the Police Services Board. Glenn voted to remove her. The whole of City Council bears responsibility for allowing that to happen for a whole month. For the command center between the RCMP, OPP, and OPS took more than 2 weeks to form. If Diane Dean had to go, then all of City Council should have gone with her if that was the case, if we're going to hold people accountable for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Tanya, please. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Tanya, please.
I asked him to volunteer for me early in this campaign. Just going back to the Auditor General, the public inquiry that we did end up being a really large investigation. There were thousands of documents that were deemed relevant. There was a lot of testimony, and I think there were a lot of unexpected elements that came through. I am, with no shade on the Auditor General at all, I don't think her budget, as it was, might have had the capacity that we needed to get the right investigation to find out whatever we are going to find out. We don't have those results yet, but I am looking forward to them at the end of November. So that's one element, and I think when we're talking about the Police Services Board and what happened there, that was just part of the larger discord and dysfunction that we saw at Council. The conflicts became so pronounced that we lost our ability to make effective decisions, to have effective discussions, and to really do the business of the city. It just got lost and cast aside, and that's not what we need. We need councillors who are able to work together, who are going to be looking out for their communities and for making the best decisions and not getting caught up in these power plays.
Thank you, Tanya. Matthew, please.
Well, I do agree with my two counterparts here at the end. Glenn has let us down tremendously. And I read his platform 4 years ago when he ran, and I would have voted for him 4 years ago, and I would have been duped too. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. The occupation, we had over a week to prepare for it. We all knew that these truckers were coming. They were even late. And I mean, I had time to plan around it. We all did, and the city seemed to have been surprised that they showed up, and I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe Glenn can answer that. We're talking about cars getting stolen out of our driveways nightly. That is something that will stop. And we are blessed enough to live in non-gated communities in Canada, in Ontario, and in Ottawa. And we're going to keep it that way. But we have to make sure that we live in safe communities and that we have the proper police coverage. Congestion, well, that's due to bad planning. And we know when we side with the builders and the developers and we fail to plan, we're going to have increased congestion. Our population is going to double in the next 20 years. We have to keep that in mind. And we are not building the adequate infrastructure we need to plan for success. If we fail to plan, we plan for failure.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, that concludes that question then. We have no more tickets outstanding. Oh, there are hands. Okay. So if you'd like to come to ask a question, then come forward.
So I live right behind the new building on Stittsville, Maine, and we sit on our deck at night, and we hear loud exhausts, and we hear cars ripping down Stittsville, Maine, and then they're going down Orville Street, or they're coming down Orville Street, and then they rip down Stittsville, Maine. But the problem is when they're coming down Orville to rip up Stittsville, Maine south, they don't have a turning lane. So they take out the light standard like they did last week. Hats off to the city for being out there real quick to replace it. And their exhausts are extremely loud. So this is to everybody, and I'd like a realistic answer. Please don't dodge it. What are you going to do about it? Because it does get really annoying.
Thank you. I'd like to start with Kevin on this one and work your way left, please.
Yeah, I think this touches into the more general issue of road safety that we've been seeing increasingly a problem in Stittsville. A lot more speeding, a lot more vehicle traffic. One of the problems is that we keep relying on flex stakes. I mean, 4 years ago, Mr. Gower said we can't keep relying on flex stakes, yet 4 years in, flex stakes are all we still have. Those things cost $800 a pop, and they're a logistical nightmare to install and take out. And so, it's about putting in traffic calming designs on the road, designing our roads with people in mind, the safety of people. And an additional thing, something that I saw a while back was the use of, I think, essentially noise cameras, and essentially, if vehicles are going at a certain decibel above, they would essentially get fined. Just like if they were going at too high a speed. I think this is something we should consider, a pilot in our community. I think it would definitely be a great idea, especially since we've been hearing a lot more street racing, this sort of thing. So that's something I'd like to see implemented in the community.
Thank you, Kevin. Tanya, please.
This issue has been going on and on and on for years now, and we haven't had the enforcement. We don't have the design changes that we need. Police coverage is really thin citywide, particularly in Stittsville. It's rare to see the type of coverage that we might see in other areas of the city. I do agree with Kevin on the noise cams and also speed cams. I think we need to have just more efforts and attack on all fronts, because it's a challenge at night when we have the racing. It's a challenge during the day when kids are trying to get to school. It's a challenge midday just to go down Stittsville Main Street. Sometimes people are, they're ripping up going as fast as they can. So we really do need to look at more enforcement and more measures just to entice people to slow down, and usually that means a ticket of some sort and hitting them in the pocketbook.
Thank you, Tanya. And Matthew, please.
Thank you. So at the last debate, I brought this up to Glenn about Abbott Street and how we're prioritizing speed traps over speed breakers. And I think we have taxed the people enough, and we have enough of taxation. So when I asked him since he's resurfacing this road, if he could put a speed bump, and by speed bump, I mean a nice big speed breaker. And he had over 4 weeks to do it, and it was interesting to see if he did, and he did not do that. And the reason why I care is because the speed cameras, yeah, they could be effective, but they're not effective immediately at mitigating immediate risk. For people that are speeding, kids at night, they don't know the camera's there, they're going to hit a kid, they're going to do something really impactful to the community, and they're going to get a ticket 3 weeks later in the mail. That does nothing to mitigate immediate risk. We need to mandate builders to build speed breakers within our developments. I live on a very busy collector road, and people are speeding left, right, and center, and I agree with Kevin about noise cameras. We need to look into that.
Thank you. Glenn, please.
So number one is more police enforcement, actual police officers, police on motorbikes, police on cars in our community. A previous questioner mentioned that police are spread too thin. I would agree. We need more police presence to send a message. I do support speed cameras. They work extremely well. Right now, we're really limited by the province as to where we can set those up. I'd like to do like Edmonton does and have the ability to put in mobile speed cameras. Tickets do make a big difference. I'm going to keep advocating that the province update their laws for stronger penalties for illegal car modifications, stronger penalties and impoundment times for stunt racing and for loud engines, even things like tinted windows. It's a small thing. If we could crack down and make a more stringent rules and laws, it would help. The other one is changing the culture of speeding. Beyond street racing late at night, there's too many people who still think it's okay to drive 50 kilometers or more down a residential street. If you're anything above 40, you don't have the reaction time to stop. If a kid or a pet runs into the street, we need people to slow down and respect the rules of the road in our residential communities.
Thank you. Okay, I'd invite you to ask your question, please. Yeah.
Okay. I've been listening to all the questions tonight and the topics, and I'm really surprised at one topic that hasn't come up at all, and it's possible because it is a provincial jurisdiction primarily, and that is healthcare, and in particular community healthcare. All of the candidates have mentioned how the population of Stittsville is growing and how it's going to double in the next so many years. You've also talked about transportation issues. So where do you stand? Do you have a plan? Do you have any ideas about how would you bring about accessible community health care, especially for our aging population in the future?
Thank you. I'll ask Tanya to start, and then we'll go right along the table.
Like you said, there is a huge provincial element there. We can certainly work with our provincial counterparts to see what partnerships we can bring about, to see what services we can bring into the community. Oftentimes, I grew up in a rural community, so every time we needed to access a specialist or something like that, it was, a few hours of driving. Luckily, most of us in Ottawa are able to access the services across the city, but it's way better if we can have those services closer to home. You improve accessibility, you improve just access in general. People aren't avoiding getting the care they need if it's closer to home. So I would like to see us utilize the services that we have now. We have some great health-oriented businesses in Stittsville. We have the imaging clinic, we have pharmacies that have more services now that you can access medical care, like doctor's appointments virtually, with the pharmacists supporting those and doing some limited testing and whatnot. I would like to see a little bit more centralization, I guess, of those services. So I don't want to use Glenn's health hub idea. He's going to take that, but to have those services brought together so they are more accessible in each local neighborhood.
And Kevin, please.
Yeah, I think this actually also touches on the issue that we've seen with the new civic campus site, the construction of the sort of mega hospital of centralizing everything into one big location. It's not really efficient to do that. I think how we should be achieving in terms of ensuring access to healthcare services in our community is decentralizing. So making it available within the community, accessible in the community. I mean, if we're going to try to achieve, walkable communities, that's something we have to do. So, I mean, that's what I have like Tanya said, I don't really want to take Glenn's health hub idea, but that's essentially, I think, an idea most of us here are in agreement is that, these services need to be available, not extremely urgent emergency care, but things like specialists, imaging that can be available close to the community would be great. And then, if there's a more serious emergency, you can go to the hospital for that.
Thank you. And Glenn, please.
Yeah, so a health hub for Stittsville, it's number 3 on my list of 10 priorities for Stittsville. I'm looking at a model over in the East End called the Orleans Health Hub that opened last year. And what it does is it brings all sorts of medical services together under one roof. There's a location here in Stittsville where we could set that up near the existing police station. And I'm leading a group to make that happen here in our community. The Queensway Carleton is one of the major partners. They're looking for a location for an urgent care center. So that would be one of the anchor organizations there. We would also have a family medical clinic, family doctors there, and significantly would be bringing healthcare services that aren't now available in Canada or Stittsville to the West End. So if you have to go for an eye care appointment, for specialized eye care, you probably have to go to the General or the Riverside today. We could bring some of those services to Stittsville 1 or 2 days a week, similar with CHEO or the Royal Auto Hospital, and all these organizations are involved in the conversations. It's a partnership. City would be providing the land. I'm providing some organizational leadership and support on it, and we're bringing a number of hospitals, the Western Ottawa Community Resource Center, and other organizations to make this a reality in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Glenn. Matthew?
Yeah, I was interested to see Glenn's article in the paper about a health hub when he voted against smaller regional hospitals and bringing us healthcare here in Stittsville in favor of expanding the civic campus, an area already well serviced by hospitals. I think we need an emergency health center like we see in Alberta to service smaller communities like us, so people don't have to go to Smiths Falls, Carleton Place, etc. And we're talking about car dependency. Well, you need a car to get to these places. And so Glenn, again, with the promises, but he voted against what he just said, and now he wants to push for that in his second term, so let's just judge him on what he did his first term.
Thank you, Matthew. I would really like to give people an opportunity to ask a question once if they haven't already. So I know you've gifted us with one of your questions earlier, but would you be kind enough to wait till, you 3 haven't asked a question yet, have you? No. Would you be kind enough to wait after? I promise we'll get to your 4th question. Would that be possible? Thank you very much. Oh, well, no, okay. This lady here, yes, come forward. No, yeah. Yes, please, go ahead with your question, please. And I'm going to ask you, please make your questions 45 seconds long. The whole context thing we'll have to reduce a little bit, okay?
Okay, this question is about relying on the City of Ottawa. They are really far behind. In 2000, they had a program that was initiated showing that they were the crisis that was coming in the healthcare crisis. And speaking to this woman who's really just took part of my question is to each of the candidates. We have 65% of our population over the age of 55 in the City of Ottawa. I was at a meeting with the City of Ottawa, and they were planning 95,000 new homes coming to Ottawa. And after about 20 minutes, I asked him what the demographic was that these homes were targeted for. And he said, oh, wow, that was a really good question. 95,000 homes, and they don't know that 60% of our population are over the age of 55 and 60. We want to know what that's doing. So my question to each of the candidates is, planning is what we've heard already tonight.
Yeah.
If you fail to plan, then you can fail, right?
What's your question, please?
So my question is, what is the plan that you're going to put into play? That's what we need to know, because we don't want to rely on 7, 10, 15 years from now. What is the plan that you have? We've seen what's been done in the last 4 years. I'm more looking at somebody who's going to represent us in the city and tell us what we're able to have.
Matthew to answer that question first, and we're going to turn left after that.
So,
Thank you.
Let's talk about urban planning yet again. So what she's mentioned makes a lot of sense, and it's very valid. Building 2-story townhomes in cornfields doesn't take care of what she's just mentioned. So I want to build sustainable, walkable, and transit-oriented developments around our transit hubs, so the light rail transit. And so that's what we're going to have to do, build apartment-style condos so that they can accommodate the elderly and the aging population, so we don't have to, just be subjected to stairs. We can't build bungalows. That's not really an option. They take too much space, large footprint. So we're going to have to get smart and really think about how we can service our aging population, which is a real issue.
Glenn, please.
So demographics are changing. Even though we see a lot of new families moving to Stittsville, the average age of our population is going to keep going up and up and up over the coming decades. We actually at the city just passed an official plan, and part of it was to recognize just what you're addressing, which is the need for a greater variety of housing and housing that's suitable for older adults as they begin to downsize, as they might have mobility issues, they still want to remain in the community and close to families, and especially in affordable homes. So there's a number of policies and initiatives through that official plan to recognize that we need to have good variety and choice and affordability of homes as our population gets older. We also need to support that in the community. The Health Hub is part of that, but also recreation services. So the city has a number of recreation facilities, and we need to keep older adults at the forefront. Also, organizations like the Amberwood Golf Course in our community. They provide some great recreational and social activities for the seniors community around there. And the Friendship Club is another great organization here in Stittsville that supports social activities for older adults. So we need to keep on supporting and encouraging more groups to create programs to support our aging demographics here.
Thank you, Glenn. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I mean, the aging population in Ottawa is generally disproportionately more likely to be homeless. So one of the things that we need to be doing as a city is using the tool of inclusionary zoning, compelling developers to include more affordable housing in developments, but also to include things like green space, park space, for our aging population to enjoy, because a lot of them like to walk, a lot of them like to enjoy the nature, and that also means building our communities, filling in those connectivity gaps, because if they're stuck, cooped up in their houses, if they're unable to safely go out, enjoy the community, that is a problem. So those are the things that I'd like to see to improve the quality of our community, the quality of our spaces for our aging population.
Thank you, Kevin. Glenn? Tanya, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
No, sorry.
I remember being at a presentation from Age Friendly Ottawa several years back, and one of the things that really stuck with me is when you build an age-friendly city, you're building a city that's accessible for everyone. And it's the same, you can also frame it, child-friendly cities are accessible and safe for everyone. So that's always been in the back of my mind, and I do really think, like the others have mentioned, we need to focus on having a variety of housing available, housing that will allow seniors to age in place for as long as they want to. That means the surrounding community also has to be accessible, so we need to make sure our sidewalks aren't tripping hazards, that we can get to transit quickly without having to clamber over snowbanks in the winter. Affordability, of course, is an issue. Stittsville is not an affordable community. Like I said, we haven't created a single affordable unit in Stittsville over this last term of council. And Glenn mentioned recreation and the importance of that. Absolutely, that's important. The SVA has run a walking program for many years now, and the socialization is a huge part of that. We had a gentleman come to the SVA several times. He was trying to form a senior social club utilizing city facilities during areas or periods of time where they were underused, and the city refused to give even a break on the rental rates, and it just snuffed out the idea. So those are ways that I think we could easily and with relatively low financial impact have a positive change in the community, give seniors more opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to note that we're getting a little bit later in our evening now, and if we want to end at 9 o'clock, which was our initial promise to you that we would end at 9, then we could do these next 4 questions, and that will be pretty well it. But I'd ask you also to please get your questions within your 45 seconds, okay? Please go ahead.
For running, and I've appreciated the discussion here tonight. I wanted to ask about transit. Sure. Yes. I wanted to ask about transit. I take transit to work. It takes 3 hours out of my day. I have kids who go to school downtown, to the University of Ottawa. It takes them 3 hours, sometimes more, depending on the time of day. I voted for Glenn last time because he promised reliable transit. It's been 4 years.
Your question, please.
Yes, and the service has gone down. I'd like to ask all of you, what would you do to advocate for better transit in Stittsville? Thank you.
We'll begin with Glenn and we'll go right, please.
Well, first of all, I take transit, and I think it's important for any elected official to use the transit system, to understand how it works, to meet transit riders and understand their concerns. One of my commitments in the last election was to take transit every day for a month, and I did that in February 2019. I hadn't taken transit regularly as a commuter, but with that experience, I became a regular transit rider, and I still do use it to get downtown. This is the worst time right now to be a transit user in Ottawa, the worst time in a generation. It cannot get worse than this, and a lot of it is due to the detours related to construction of the new train and LRT. These are about, depending on the phase of it, a year to 2 years away, and as each phase of that is complete, transit in Stittsville to get downtown is going to get drastically better. 90 minutes to get downtown from Stittsville is awful, and it needs to be better than that. I can get to City Hall from my home in about an hour and 10 minutes. That's closer to what's acceptable, but still a long way to go. I think there's a lot of opportunities to adjust some of our local groups to better serve, local routes rather, to better serve customers. We changed Route 62 last year to add weekend service and added 200 new riders on Saturday and Sunday alone in one neighborhood. So to me, it shows there's a huge unmet demand that we need to keep working on identifying where people need to get to school, where people need to get to work, and making adjustments to those routes to make sure we're serving people and helping them get around our city. There's no way we can grow to 1 million for people in Ottawa, 1 million to 1.4 million, without good, reliable transit.
Thank you, Glenn. And now to Matthew.
So much. As she mentioned, Glenn did promise better, and we got worse. So that I think applies across the board. Transit, and you guys are going to be sick of hearing me talk about Robert Grant, but Robert Grant is the backbone of our transit infrastructure. We are bringing billion-dollar LRTs to Stittsville. We are very fortunate to get them. I will push to get those expedited. Phase 3 has to happen, and we have to build Robert Grant in its intended size, so that the community could access the LRT. So the backbone being in place will allow the community to branch into our main north-south arterial, which is Robert Grant, which he's canceled. And you could watch my videos online about this. I have a lot of them, and he says no, but it's effectively a yes. And we built a single-lane road to replace our main north-south arterial, so people won't be able to optimize the LRT. So there will be no way to get to the LRT. And again, buses, buses, buses. But we are getting LRT, so let's build the proper infrastructure and the backbone of our transit infrastructure. It's very simple, but yet we hear a lot of words, and I don't know. I'm not feeling it.
Thank you, Matthew. Tanya, please.
Thanks for that question, Audrey. Yes, transit is a priority. Transit has to be better. Transit is terrible now. I hear that at almost every door I knock at. The stories of, like you said, students taking more than 3 hours out of their day, just like you are, to get to work. It's unacceptable. It's a loss of productivity. Glenn mentioned detours, and certainly that has had an impact, but there are also things that the city could have and should have addressed, like the driver shortages. We could see that coming, and that should have been addressed sooner. We have routes that don't make sense. The kids that go to Sacred Heart, a lot of them don't qualify for board-provided school bus service. So we see a lot of parents dropping off their kids. It's havoc, absolute chaos at drop-off and pickup times, especially with the construction on Abbott. That didn't help earlier here. So, just adjusting those routes, so maybe those students have an option that instead of having their parents drive them, they could hop on the bus and go to school. That makes sense to me. I think that has to be a priority. The LRT, I think it should come to Stittsville. I think long-term it will eventually add a lot to our transit experience. It's going to be an important connectivity point. We do absolutely need to root out any corruption or issues that, the problems we saw with the first stage and the contract for the second stage. I'd really like to see those addressed and then move forward with stage 3.
Thank you, Tanya. Kevin, please.
Yeah, not only do I use transit, I have to use transit. It's my only way to get around this city. And so my plan for transit in Stittsville is, first, we need to we need more local routes running through Stittsville, increase the coverage. The closest off-peak bus station or bus stop for me is a 15-minute walk. It comes every 30 minutes. If I miss that bus, I'm very likely late for my class. We also need to ensure that routes service Stittsville or directly service Stittsville, because they spend an extra 30 minutes traveling through Canada. And so we can cut travel time if we allow those routes to specifically service Stittsville. The next step of my plan is bring in a bus station. Stittsville has a population of 40,000 people. That's about, Canada has about double that. They have 4 bus stations. So we very much need a bus station here to serve as a transit hub, to serve as the foundation of our transit network here in Stittsville. It could also help to serve communities like Carp and Richmond with more reliable transit service as well. And then the third step, which is, I think this is something that's probably decades down the line. I'd probably be 30 or 40 by the time it happens, but the LRT. Bringing out the LRT is definitely something we should be achieving, but the first thing we need to address is our bus network, because that primarily should work first. It wouldn't make sense to bring out the LRT when we still have a non-functioning bus network system.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes that question. We have a moment here to kind of regroup ourselves. We're running out of time, but we still seem to have an interest in asking questions. So I'm going to ask a favor from the candidates and from the questioners. Do you think you could condense your answers to 1 minute, please? And I'd ask our timekeeper to adjust that. And then I'd ask you to keep your questions to 30 seconds. A tight, sharp question. We don't need really context, okay? Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
I think my question is mostly for...
sorry. Our timekeeper's not quite ready. Sorry, Hélène. Tell me when you're ready. No problem. She's the pro. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, you may go ahead.
Okay, so my question is mostly for Glenn, seeing as you're our counselor right now. Why, with all the school bus shortages and drivers shortages, why are there no city buses that are able to get teenagers to school? There's really no bus that goes to Richmond for our public school, and there really should be more buses within the area that kids don't have to walk half an hour to get to their school, and that's good enough.
Thank you. And I'll ask Glenn, and we're going to go to your left after.
I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head of the number of OC Transpo routes that are actually now being used where school buses used to be used. So it's actually something OC Transpo's done to help the School Board's Transportation Authority. Last year, when there were a number of bus cancellations to Richmond, to South Carleton, we did add an extra run of the bus to get students, give them a way to get there by OC Transpo to get from Stittsville to the south part of the community. And I'm very open to talking with parents, and we have talked to a number of parents and made some adjustment to routes to try to help kids get to school by bus when they need to. It would be high school students or grade 7 and upwards, not for elementary schools. But we do this a lot with OC Transpo, and if you have some specific route suggestions, we'd love to chat with you afterwards.
Thank you, Glenn. Kevin, please.
Yeah, we were just talking about transit before. It just doesn't work here. And so one of the things that I would like to see, just addressing directly the issue of South Carleton, is bringing in a bus station would allow us probably to run a reliable route to Richmond, a service route, not just a rush hour route that's just for commuters, an actual proper route between Stittsville and Richmond that high school students can use. I think the best solution, and probably the direction we should probably be moving, not just as a community but as a city, is essentially phasing out school buses, creating a transit network where we don't need school buses, where everybody can just take transit and get to school. This is how it is in the Netherlands. This is very successful, and this is probably the direction we should be going towards.
Thank you, Kevin. Tanya, please.
I also would love to see a transit system that we don't have to think too hard about. It's just always accessible. We don't have to spend a day planning it and making sure that we meet each connection, but that's probably quite a ways down the line. For now, though, I certainly would like to see more buses available to students when we are forcing parents to drive, or in the winter, when the sidewalks aren't plowed properly and the kids are expected to walk to school. We're limiting their independence and their accessibility to their actual education, and that's just unacceptable.
Thank you, Tanya. And Matthew, please.
I would like to see complete neighborhoods. I would like to see our schools built. So the Fernbank community is supposed to have 12 schools as per the master plan. We have one, Paul de Marais. We're building 2. The other one being on Robert Grant and Cope. Give these roads a break. So we are setting ourselves up for failure. We're not building schools. We're creating an area, a climate where we're bus dependent. And so these are all symptoms of bad planning, again and again, bad planning. So yes, by building incomplete neighborhoods, we are setting ourselves up for failure, and I think we had enough of that.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and you have 30 seconds to ask your question, please.
As part of the aging population, I drive a car quite a bit. I am tired of seeing children, adults, everybody darting out, no stop for anything, and you have to slam on your brakes quite quickly a lot. What I would like to know, if you are elected as councillor, is it a possibility that you could introduce into the schools again bicycling safety for children so that they will learn the rules of the road, learn what to do, and bring this up with either the school board? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to begin with Kevin, please. And we're going to go to your right.
Yeah, I think this is actually more of a symptom of how we don't have the infrastructure or the safe designs on the roads to allow for people to use active transportation to walk and cycle in our community. There's a stretch of Hazeldean Road where there isn't a crosswalk at all for a kilometer, and so it's no surprise then that people are struggling to figure out how do they cross Hazeldean as a result. There's a bus station on that side. I mean, it doesn't make sense in that way. I think this is a huge symptom of just how our roads aren't designed for people. They're just primarily designed for people that cyclists, pedestrians, kids, they get a second consideration. We need to ensure that they at least get a similar consideration in how we design roads, create these safe crosswalks, these spaces that they can actually cross our roads.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Glenn, please.
Yes, I think having a curriculum piece in elementary schools on cycling safety would be a great idea. Some schools do offer this through the Ottawa Safety Council. That's the same group that manages crossing guards. Through the pandemic, they haven't been able to offer those courses, though. In a usual year, they do hundreds of workshops in elementary schools, usually at the grade 4 or 5 level. And that's been on pause during the pandemic, and I hope they're able to resume that this year. But certainly, any programs to help remind people about cycling safety, about driving safety. We've been out handing out bike bells to people as a reminder to people to make sure they ring a bell if they're on the trail and need to pass a pedestrian. So anything we can do to encourage and teach more about safety for all road users, I certainly would support that.
Thank you, Matthew.
So I think we can do a little better than bells. Let's talk about roundabouts. I'm hearing a lot about parents and their kids going to school on Robert Grant. So we're building a lot of roundabouts that are not conducive to schools. So there's no safe way to cross. And that's the issue. Our urban form, the way we build, is not working. And again, with the planning. No speed breakers. So cars are speeding as much as they want. And it's creating a lot of hazardous conditions out there. And I think we really got to address that.
Thank you, Matthew. Are you done?
I am done.
Okay.
I was told to keep it short.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. You just looked like you were frozen in time.
Well, we were having a moment.
You were having a moment, okay. As long as you're okay, we're good. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. You can come forward. Oh, sorry, Tanya, go, please. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I really think the city needs to take responsibility for ensuring that we have more protected intersections that make it safer for kids, for adults, for people with mobility issues to actually navigate our intersections. We need crosswalks. Of course, those are always helpful if drivers are paying attention. Bike rallies in schools, yes, we'd like to see those. I'd like to see them more at community events as well. I know there have been groups that have been trying to organize them, and there are difficulties beyond pandemic restrictions. It's also been just difficult to organize from a logistical standpoint when you're trying to put something in place and make sure that you're meeting all the city rules for holding an event. It can be daunting for groups that are trying to put together simple little things like a bike rally.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, you have an opportunity to ask a 30-second question, please.
I'm pro-police. I'm against defund the police. This is a national problem, deadly serious. Women have committed suicide, Caucasian women. We're talking RCMP, Ottawa Police, I'm getting there, Toronto Police. Just so we're clear, anonymized means no names. So the question I have, 4 years, the question has come before Councillor Gower at least 6 times. He's never said yes. So can anybody here, including Councillor Gower, give me one ethical reason when women are committing suicide why there has been no yes to a transparency?
Are you asking the same question again? I'm sorry, I won't entertain the second question. Repeat it.
No.
What's new in your
question?
The
question said, can anybody here give me one ethical reason why in 4 years, receiving this question several times, the councillor has not said yeah, because the councillor opened the door by saying, when I said he said no, he said he did not say no. So I'm now saying, if you didn't say yes in 4 years, then tell us the reason. So maybe one of the others can tell us.
In the interest here, since that question is really geared to Glenn, I'm going to give him 30 seconds just to answer that quickly.
With respect, I did say people have... Hang on. With respect, I did say... Hang on. I did say people have committed suicide over this issue.
And that's tragic.
And I would like to hear from all four.
I'm going to call order now. So I'm going to ask Glenn an opportunity to have a short reply, please, and that terminates that question.
Well, I'll elaborate on what I said before. I did commit that I want to look more into the issue. You'd provided recently some other municipalities in Canada that have adopted a similar practice, and I'm absolutely interested in looking into it further. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an important issue. Thank you. Is all the councillors okay? You don't have another councillor candidate reply? Okay.
Cut after.
Afterwards, that's fine. Okay, I'll entertain your question. Short, please.
Very different topic, completely about garbage on the Trans-Canada Trail. Last year, in the springtime, we had an issue with the students at Sacred Heart littering the Trans-Canada Trail adjacent to Sacred Heart High School. I called the councillor, I called bylaw, I called the school board, I talked to the principal. For a grand total of 7 days, bylaw showed up, watched the kids throw garbage all over the Trans-Canada Trail, and did absolutely nothing about it. What do we have to do to get these guests in our community, because for the most part, most of these students are guests, to pick up their garbage?
Yeah, okay.
And what can we do? Because Glenn, you didn't do anything last time. What are we going to do this time?
We're actually going to begin with Tanya, and we're going to go right on this question.
Thank you.
Tanya.
First, I'm not sure that I would characterize the students at Sacred as guests in the community. A lot of them do live here, and they are an important part of the community, so I think we do need to respect that. Certainly, trash on the trail, that's always been a problem, and certainly disrespecting the neighborhood just by littering, that's always a problem. Bylaw should absolutely be stepping in there. I'm not sure, I wasn't privy to bylaw watching anyone, so I can't really speak to that, but certainly I would like to see more action on that as well. I can see how the school would probably say, if it's after hours, it's not on our property, it's not our problem. That tends to happen. There's a lot of passing the buck.
Okay, Kevin, please.
Yeah, I think the problem is that there isn't any place to throw the trash on the Trans-Canada Trail. So I think one of the big things we need to do, and I think this fits overall, is more trash collection points specifically along the Trans-Canada Trail. And just as another side note, because I think this fits into an overall issue in our community of providing more amenities, more benches along the Trans-Canada Trail would be nice. There are those with mobility issues, just to help make it more comfortable, a higher quality, better accessibility. But yeah, I think the big problem is there's just nowhere to throw the trash, right? If there's nowhere to throw the trash, people are just going to throw it everywhere in nature. So providing them the trash collection points, trash cans, recycling bins, where they can throw it, should help, I think, greatly reduce that problem.
Thank you, Kevin. Glenn, please. Go ahead.
There has been a garbage can added, and there are some people, I don't know whether it's students or other in the community, who don't use the garbage can. I think one of the things we can keep doing as neighbors in the community is continue to show a good example. There's a lot of people who don't use garbage cans and leave garbage on the ground. I think the example I gave earlier about the Cleaning the Capital program, where we do have hundreds of volunteers who take it upon themselves to help keep our community clean, the more people that see their neighbors and their friends cleaning up, picking up garbage, I think the more it encourages people to make the right decision and put their trash where it belongs.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Role to play in this, and speaking of educating our students, that's something that they can do to proactively tackle this issue. That's all.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, very good. So we've come to the end of our list of questions here. There's one question we've received from Facebook that we'd like to share. Would you like to ask a question? We're going to be past the 9 o'clock mark. Okay, well, just 1 second. I need a consensus from those of you present here this evening. Are you willing to stay for another few minutes? Yes. Okay, fine. We just want to respect your time and your life, okay? So if you'd like to ask a 30-second question, go ahead, and our council candidates will answer in a minute.
This one is for Tanya. How are you going to address the snow on the sidewalks and pathways in the wintertime for access to school and other public parks?
Thank you, Tanya, and we'll go right.
This is one of my 4 sons who I did not expect to show up tonight.
Very good, very good.
And he is
Welcome.
a new student at Sacred Heart and is discovering the walk when he's not able to bike. So it's nice that he's thinking ahead. Of course, winter trail maintenance, I think, is really important, not just for accessing school, but for general health and recreation in the community. So I would like to see that along the trail. Often we're just sort of walking and creating little goat paths in the winter, but I'd like to see a lot more emphasis put on snow removal, not just on the trail, but on sidewalks especially. It's really an accessibility issue, not just a maintenance issue.
Thank you, Tanya. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have too much to add. I extremely echo what Tanya said. This is very much an accessibility issue. There are plenty of those who, we're all Canadians. We're all fine with walking in the winter. And so we need to see more snow removal, de-icing of our sidewalks, of our paths, the trails, because, even during the winter, we still like to enjoy a good walk.
Thank you. Glenn, please.
Yeah, I think we should be investing more tax dollars towards snow clearing, including on sidewalks and pathways, and prioritizing routes that kids take to school the most often and routes that are close to where seniors live in our community, which is pretty much everywhere. But it's money well spent if we can invest in those areas.
Thank you. Matthew, please.
I think Tanya answered it really well, and she might have had time to prepare for that one. But yes, snow clearing is a priority, and I've heard it time and again at the doors that smaller roads in our communities are not getting plowed after 4 days after a storm. So again, we're not getting our fair share of our dollars from Ottawa.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the young person for the young question. Okay, so now we have a final question from Joseph, please.
I think my mic's working. Good, thank you. We do have a question from a person on our Facebook feed. And her name is Chelsea Walton. I thank you for your question, Chelsea. And it is as such. To all the candidates, what are you most proud of in terms of your contributions to Stittsville so far?
Okay, and we'll begin with Matt, please.
So I was the champion for my neighborhood. So when I built new, like I said earlier, we were abandoned by the builders because the city doesn't do the right thing at regulating them to do the right thing. Instead, we're expecting them to do the right thing, which is what I was told time and again by Glenn himself. And so what I did was I took on Mattamy myself. I even ended up throwing my shoe at their truck in the middle of the pandemic. We hadn't seen them in a year, and we were living in a landfill, and my neighbors and my clients were asking me, what is going on? Why did the builder just abandon us? Why don't we have a lawn, driveway, street, sidewalk, anything, parks, schools? We have nothing. We're building incomplete communities, and the builders are left just having free reign to do whatever they want in the community, and that needs to end immediately. So I championed Mattamy at getting the corporate people on site to understand what they're doing to us, and they came to my street and with their little hard hats and said, "Oh wow, who did this?" Well, I mean, the name's on your hat.
Thank you,
so
Matthew.
that's what I did.
Thank you very much. Glenn, please.
The thing I'm most proud of is the city's storm response back in May.
Okay.
And a lot of credit has to go to my office team. A few of them are here tonight. And a lot of volunteers and a lot of city staff who really went above and beyond during the week and a half that people were without power after that storm. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Glenn. And Kevin, please.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I've had, compared to the other candidates, I haven't had as much of a long life to have achieved much in the community. But I guess if I were to pick something, having run twice as a federal candidate for this community has been very rewarding, very achieving. Being able to be a young voice advocating for important issues, not just in the community, but also for young people that don't necessarily get raised as much in the community. So I think it's that sort of being able to be represent, give a voice to marginalized voices in our community as a federal candidate.
Thank you, Kevin. And Tanya now, please.
One of the things I'm most proud of is how much I've learned about the community just by taking part. I first got involved with the SVA. I just saw an article in the Stittsville News that said there was concern about getting enough people involved. And so, I jumped in there. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know what an arterial road was. And, now I've reached a point where I've participated so much and for such a long time that people come to me with questions almost daily. And so that's something I'm really proud of, that, I've been able to become a resource for the community.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay. That concludes our question and answer period. And I think it's nice to land on a positive note like that, and everybody's worked very hard, so we can breathe for a moment, and our candidates will now give you their closing statements. In the reverse order, they gave you their opening statements, so we will hear first from Glenn, please.
Thank you, Louise. First of all, thank you to Louise for being an excellent moderator again tonight. Yep. And thank you to all of the volunteers who made tonight's event possible. There's Joseph and the volunteers from the SVA, Len with the timekeeping, and the folks from ISI as well. Thank you. Thank you to the fellow candidates for putting their names and ideas forward, Tanya, Kevin, and Matt. Thank you to my volunteer team who've been out installing signs, knocking on doors, helping out in every way possible. We've now just visited 10,000 homes. We're just about to reach that. Thank you. Yes. About 10,000 homes. I continue to learn something every day about this community. And one thing I hope people realize who might be watching this and don't know about Stittsville, we actually live in a great community. I meet people every day who say, this is the best place I've lived. And these are people who've lived elsewhere in Canada, elsewhere around the world. They love living in Stittsville. And we need to keep working together, all of us, to make sure this remains a great community to live in. Please remember to vote on October 24th. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Glenn. And Kevin, please.
I'm actually going to stand for this because I think it's pretty important. But so thank you to the SVA and the SBA for hosting this meeting, this all candidates meeting. Thanks to all the candidates for coming forward for this election. Thank you to all of you for coming out, participating in this discussion in democracy. I've lived in Stittsville for 19 years. I grew up here, and like Glenn said, I know what a great community it is. I've witnessed Stittsville transform from a small village to the bustling community it is now, and I very much know it deserves so much more. And that's why I want to play a role in its next chapter, its next 20 years, in seeing how it transforms into an even greater community. City Council desperately needs new blood, new perspective, some vision to change the ways we've been doing in the past. It takes bold, ambitious, and transformative ideas to build a stronger and healthier community. No longer should we allow ourselves to be bound by the chains of moderation, caution, or mediocrity. We need to allow our imagination, our ambition, our passion to flow free and to build a stronger and healthier community together. And so I hope I can win your support on October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you. I invite Tanya now to present her closing statement.
Thank you to everyone for sticking with us tonight through all these questions and answers. There were a lot of good topics raised, and I appreciate that. Last election, less than half of eligible Stittsville voters showed up at the ballot box, so I really appreciate your engagement and interest tonight. On paper, three of us at this table look fairly similar. Matt has some different ideas that he's putting apart, but I think most of us, in terms of our priorities and goals, it's about common sense. What I think sets me apart is my depth and commitment to service to the community, how I've been involved over the years. Like I said, I moved here in 2005 and I jumped in almost immediately. So from the early 2000s, when we were fighting the dump and fighting the dump again, I was there, I was part of that. And when it was finally approved, I was the last one speaking up at the Finance Committee meeting trying to get fair compensation for the community. I was there. When a developer wants to drop the equivalent of a small town into someone's backyard, it's me that's going through those submission documents, looking for any red flags or concerns that I can take to the community meetings, to committee, and to council. When we don't have the proper infrastructure in place, again, I'm that person speaking up. When something just needs doing in Stittsville, whether it's picking up trash, whether it's raising money for a good cause, whether it's organizing a community event, I've been there. And I will continue to show up. I'll show up with integrity and a real passion for making Stittsville the very best place that it can be. I will listen, I will vote independently, and I will treat your tax dollars with the same respect that I have for my own personal budget. I will speak up for Stittsville's present and for our future, and I'm really, really hoping that you will trust me on October 24th with your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And now we'll hear from Matthew, please.
Thank you, Tanya. Yes, I do have different visions, and some are maybe controversial. But as an urban planner and as somebody who's had a lot of experience in project management, engineering, and so forth, I have a clear idea as to where we need to go. And I think we should elect an urban planner and fix what is wrong. And I am somebody who's an outsider. I'm not a politician, as you might have found out by now, and I am somebody who's very keen in rebuilding our community. Like I said, I'm somebody who built new in the area, and I intend on spending a lot of my life here, but in its current form, it's becoming increasingly difficult to live a comfortable life without frustration due to our infrastructure and everything I've mentioned today. And just know that my priority will be to prioritize Stittsville, to prioritize you guys, and prioritize everything that we stand for, and make sure that Stittsville remains a quiet, tranquil suburb, and that it doesn't turn into other parts of the city that we've seen expand exponentially in the last 5 years. And I'm not going to mention different suburbs, but I think we have a good idea of which ones they are. And Stittsville is one of the last, I wouldn't say livable places, but places where we have great quality of life. And I think if we plan properly and we master plan properly together and prioritize our interest above others, like special interest groups, builders, and even the mayor, we can do great things together. And I will listen to you guys and you guys only, and I promise you that. So let's vote for change, and let's vote for smart change. And I'm very excited to meet up with everybody as soon, and if I'm elected, we will do public consultations at Cardell Rec immediately, and we will start planning for our future so that we are prepared for when opportunities like the healthcare center present themselves at City Council, and that we will have a plan and something to advocate for Stittsville, like the CTC area. We need to talk about that, and we do need to talk about portables and other issues in the community that are extremely important, not just to me, but to all of us. So hopefully I can gain your trust and get your vote on October 24th, or even in early voting. And please continue to come see me at Village Square Park, 11 to 3 p.m. every Sunday. And you can check out my website whenever you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So I'd like to, I think you would agree with me that our candidates worked very hard this evening and they spoke very well. So let's give them a round of applause.